Hello, we are the FOEs, and for those of you who don't know what that stands for, Family Over Everything. My name is Hannah Lobin.
I'm Raina Quinnell.
I'm Alex Anderson.
I'm Kendra Helmbrecht.
I'm Chelsea Borges.
And I'm Danielle Gottslavin.
Today we'll be talking about the Anderson family, which consists of 5 individuals. So the 2 parents, Mark and Susan, and then they have 3 kids, which are Kevin, James, and Millie. The Anderson family is like every normal family. They have issues, they have fights, and just with them being a military family, that definitely could make them worse, but involving military families, it's not abnormal. So the family systems theory is a good theory to go through with the assumptions and terms and explain why the actions they have been doing is why it's happening.
So Lieutenant Major Mark is what I'm going to start with today. And he, like stated earlier, is a part of the military. And his role in the military is being a leader and being actively involved with every individual below him. And he is usually 200 to 300 people is what he oversees. So in that role, he is stern, and he takes that over into his other role of being both a husband and father. And his children kind of view him as the strict parent who never lets them do anything fun, never lets them be involved in anything, because he's always very strict and stern. And that is the same way with how he is in his marriage with Susan. He just never really lets her expand her horizons and do the things that she really wants to do. And Mark is actually at a training event and sadly gets hurt. But that means that he gets put on military leave due to his injury and is stationed to be at home with Susan and the 3 children for 4 weeks due to his injury, and has to kind of just be around and sit around and hang out with Susan and the children.
Susan Anderson is the wife of Mark. She is what the kids consider more of the caring, loving parent. She shows more affection towards them. Before her and Mark were married, she used to be a registered nurse, but she has not done this for 17 years since her first son Kevin was born. Since then, she's been more of a stay-at-home mom, takes care of all the things at home. Now that all the kids are old enough to be in school, she kind of wants to go back to being a nurse. But she knows that the medical field has changed a lot in the last 17 years, so she always thinks about going back to school. But because of how often they move since they're a military family, she doesn't see this as an option. And she doesn't like discussing with Mark because she knows it upsets him, because he thinks that their marriage is good the way it is and she should stay at home and take care of the kids.
So now that we've heard a bit about the parents, let's go into a little more depth about how the children are acting.
Kevin is age 17. He is the oldest child of Mark and Susan. His most proud accomplishment is his athletic ability. He especially is really, really good at soccer. Both of his parents are very proud of his athletic ability and like to brag about it often. Mark, his father, gets into conflict with Kevin most often because he is extremely strict about his schedule with study habits and practice. Kevin is extremely good at making friends, and that is also another thing that his parents are extremely proud of.
Next is James. He's 12 years old, and he's the middle child. He pretty much isolates himself from the entire family. He doesn't have really any strong relationships or anything like that. He's big into video games, and his only friends, he would say, is definitely just through the video games themselves. He pretty much goes with the flow. He does what he's told and never argues back. For example, when his dad always says that he needs to go to the soccer fields with Kevin, he just goes with it, even though he never really participates and just sits on the sideline. He'll still go just to not cause any conflict. He causes separation in the family just because he's not connected and is always in his room, never tries to put himself and have conversations with the other family members or try and get along with them by any means. He does know the basic rules, pretty much like when Millie wants something and it's given to her. No arguing back about that. He does definitely see that Mark shows favoritism towards Kevin, and he notices that often. He thinks that's why James doesn't even want the relationship with his dad, especially because he doesn't even think that his dad cares as much as he does for his older brother. James is definitely at risk for acting out because of not having a relationship with anyone in the family. He definitely doesn't have that role or like parent that would tell him otherwise. If he acted out, he would just go with it.
And then moving on to Millie, she is the youngest of the family, and she's also the only girl in the family. She's 5 years old. She is considered the princess of the family. Whatever Millie wants, Millie gets, is kind of how it goes. And if Millie doesn't get what she wants, she will normally react violently, like a temper tantrum or screaming and yelling. The family possibly could be giving in to her like that just so there's less stress and conflict in the family. Because if Millie's around screaming and they're also dealing with James on his Game Boy and Kevin not interacting with the family and stuff like that, they don't want to deal with Millie's behavior as well. So that possibly could be why they let it happen. Also, the school has noticed issues with Millie's behavior, so they have called Mark and Susan. Susan is kind of relieved by this because she needs help with Millie's behavior, and she feels that since the school is noticing it, it actually needs to happen now. Mark doesn't like it, though. He thinks family issues should stay at home, and the school shouldn't get involved with things that are happening in the family. To this point, Susan has told the kids, let Millie get what she wants so we don't have to deal with her behavior. But James has started to refuse to give in to her, which has kind of caused her behavior to act out a little more. And overall, they just need to work past dealing with their behavior. And so here's some of the agencies that we came up with to help the family. We have the Boys and Girls Club of America, which will target James, Kevin, and Millie, and then the Military Marriage Counseling will help Mark and Susan. So with the Boys and Girls Club of America, it is a nationwide organization for youth and teens to attend with specialized programs to enhance development in multiple areas. And the good thing about this is there's actually a Boys and Girls Club of America in Germany where the Andersons are at right now. They offer programs such as sports and recreation. So, for example, leaders can get the kids into the gym, play a game of kickball, get out jump ropes, hopscotch, anything like that to get the kids moving, which will also help their health. Education, so such as tutoring, 30-minute breaks to sit down, have the kids do their homework from school, stuff like that. The arts would be like coloring activities, other hands-on arts activities, or even like activities such as like singing or dancing, activities like that. Health and wellness, this also goes with just providing healthy meals for the family, providing meals that even some families maybe don't have time or money to give the kids at home. Career development and character and leadership is also offered. This would be especially helpful for Kevin since he is 17 years old, thinking about going on to college. He's a very good athlete, so people at the Boys and Girls Club could help Kevin to look at colleges, look into scholarships and stuff like that. This also includes specialized programs for children from the ages 6 to 18. Millie is a little short from that cutoff, but she's about 6 years old, so she'll be there soon. It also has longer hours than typical after-school programs, and daycares, which benefits families who work odd hours, such as military families like this. It allows the children to explore different interests and improve social, cognitive, emotional, and physical development. So this will... and then also the Boys and Girls Club of America military installations. So there are 484 of them worldwide. We're specifically talking about the Germany location since that's where the Andersons are at right now. And they're focused on military-connected youth and has a specialized program for these children to overcome obstacles that military youth face. So I think it's important that the children are attending this specialized Boys and Girls Club. Talk about, this will help this family just because they are dealing with moving constantly with the military and just having an authoritative father and stuff like that. And so this will specifically help Millie because she could work with a professional one-on-one to deal with her behavior. She'll also be surrounded constantly by other kids, which will force her to have to regulate her behavior. And also this will just help the kids to interact together, which they normally don't do at home. They normally kind of do their own thing. And it'll also free up some time for Mark and Susan to either go to their counseling, go grocery shopping, or do stuff like that.
It'll help James, and because just to make actual connections, even just in the virtual world, which he's at right now, it'll help him get involved with his brother and sister and have more of a relationship with them instead of staying in his room all the time and actually making connections through his family. He would also maybe not feel like he's such an outsider with his family if he would become more connected with them and then slowly work with making a relationship with his dad, Mark, and mom, Susan.
And then Kevin will be most helped by the Boys and Girls Club by improving his leadership skills with working with his peers that come from all different places. And like was stated before, he'll be able to look into scholarships and do different research on college programs and get a lot of assistance with applying to those colleges and bettering his future.
All right, so now we'll move on to the Military Marriage Counseling Agency.
Alright, so the military marriage counseling would definitely help Mark and Susan specifically, just because they are the married couple of the family, obviously. The military marriage counseling is a military-based couples counseling that offers the face-to-face counseling sessions for military couples that would really benefit Mark and Susan. The counseling station is located in Germany as well, so it does help like all the families that are having these same issues on the base as Mark and Susan. These counseling services are focused on the issues the military spouses may have, such as deployments, children, etc. So the main focuses that they would want to be working on is the relationships with the kids and the relationship with each other. Since they aren't normally together that much, besides the little military leave that Mark did have when he got injured. It allowed him to get a little insight of what Susan goes through every day and figure out how he can better his family and be the father that he wants to be to his kids. The counseling service also offers free webinars, and those are just seminars that are through the web, and it helps since they are in Germany. If someone from the U.S. can help them more than someone on the base can, those are the webinars that help them through that situation that they have. This can really help Mark specifically in the way that, like I mentioned before, he doesn't really know what goes on at home, and he's on the base a majority of his time that they are in Germany because he is there for his job. He has really odd hours, so when the kids are at the Boys and Girls Club, like Danielle said, it gives them time to connect with just each other, get some groceries, and errands done that they normally couldn't do when they have 3 kids that are constantly arguing and giving them trouble.
This can also greatly benefit Susan because the military marriage counseling will give her and Mark more time to spend together and it'll help them kind of reconnect with their marriage since they've kind of just in a ho-hum pattern. They'll learn how to communicate better, deal with their issues since Susan always kind of kept everything to herself instead of telling Mark what was bothering her. She'll be able to more explain to him how she wants to go back to school and start working again. The Boys and Girls Club of America will also help her because with the kids being gone and out of the house, she'll be able to possibly go back to school or even find a job. That way she can get back to what she wants to be doing. And both of these together also help because Mark being at home more is better, so it'll be 2 parents at home instead of just one. So it'll be kind of more than just her having to punish the kids or deal with them or take them everywhere. So he'll be able to help with all these different things that go on in their family.
At first, Mark was really reluctant when Susan was like, hey, I think we should maybe sit down and go to a military marriage counseling. And like I had mentioned, he was just reluctant and not really wanting to take that step forward because he felt like everything was perfect and in their family, and he really just didn't really want to do it at all. But initially he started it, and it really wasn't all for it. But then the more that him and Susan talked, he really just recognized so much of what he was missing out on and in his marriage. And just kind of like Alex had mentioned, like Susan was taking so much responsibility on, and the counselor really just like pinpointed and targeted Mark and Susan, in both Susan recognizing where she does need to like obey Mark and to listen to Mark and realize what kind of person he is, but that also needs to relay into Mark and how he sees Susan, and just recognize what Susan does around the house, what she does with the children, and how she cooks and how she cleans. And maybe she's exhausted after a day of cooking and cleaning, but then she has to turn around and help all 3 of the children with homework. And if Millie has acting out, she's dealing with punishment. And Mark just kind of like took over and would either help clean, or he would help cook, or he would help doing the homework. And it just kind of, whatever Susan never would openly talk about that with Mark, but since going to the counseling, he was more willing to be like, hey, Susan, where do we need to have, like, where do you need me to step in at? Like, where can I help out? And Susan, at first, it was hard for her to, like, talk about those things, just because Mark had never really wanted to have those conversations with her and really wanted to get to know what he needed to help out with. But now that Mark was going to counseling with Susan and was recognizing these things that he could help out, Susan was more willing to give up cooking and was willing to give up cleaning, or they kind of just like made it a family thing. And Mark would have James help him, and Millie and Susan would maybe set the table, and Kevin would clean up all the dishes. And they just made it more of a family thing, and they never really realized how when their marriage was more put together and more well-founded, that they would be willing to, it would help out all 3 of the kids. And the kids just really recognized, like, hey, Dad's been more involved, Mom's been happier, you know? And this also led to a conversation during the counseling of how maybe Mark needed to take a step back in his career, and maybe it was time for Susan to move forward in hers. And she had never really wanted to talk about that, but the counselor kind of was like, hey, let's get that out on the table right now. And Susan she was super open about the fact that she felt like she was always following Mark around. And at first Mark was like, well, you signed up for that. You married me. But Susan just kind of told him that, you know what, like, I want to do this. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 17 years. I followed you around to different locations all over the world. And now it's time for maybe me to step up and take on going back to school, maybe pursuing a CNP, or just like getting a better realization of what the nursing world looked like nowadays. And Mark eventually kind of was like, yeah, I think maybe we can talk about that. I think maybe I can take a step down and can really just see where you want to be and what the future holds. But overall, the counseling was a huge success, and Mark and Susan just recognized so much that they could work on, and it benefited them, and it benefited their children, and so overall, it benefited the family. And it was all because they had taken that step into taking a marriage counseling class.
You want to go
In conclusion,
in conclusion, the Mark and Susan really came together as a couple, and it proves to the kids that the counseling does actually really help. And military families aren't perfect, and neither is any family. And the family systems theory really did help us figure out, like, where they can improve and where they are lacking. And this could help with pretty much any family.